All right, guys, welcome back to another episode of D54. My name is Amit, and I am going to talk to you guys about L2E Empuraan. It's finally here. It broke all the box office records on day one, I believe. It broke the Book My Show booking system. This movie was just such a big deal, and there was so much hype around this movie, and understandably so, because it is the sequel to the blockbuster smash hit Lucifer from 2019. So people were really excited for this movie, me included, because I had recently seen Lucifer and I was so excited to see what Prithviraj has up his sleeve for the sequel to that movie. Now, I'm going to tell you guys, this is going to be my review. I'm going to talk about what I liked about this movie. I'm going to talk to you about some of the things I didn't like so much about this movie. But I want to let you guys know this is my own unfiltered views. I have not gone on. I don't know what the word of mouth is about this movie. I'm just giving you my personal opinion. And on top of that, this will be mostly a spoiler-free review, so it won't spoil anything for any of the people that haven't watched this movie by now. I'm assuming everyone's watched this and in some way or the other, but I'm going to keep it very light on spoilers, if any. So I'm not going to give away any story details, but I might talk a little bit around maybe things like timing or my perception of certain characters and things like that, but I won't give away any plot details. So let me get this started. I'm going to go do it like I always do. Start with my expectations coming in. So coming in, guys, I'll be honest. After watching Lucifer recently, my expectations were pretty high in terms of walking away from L2E being entertained. But that's really it. I was looking for a movie that entertains me. I was hoping this movie would still stay in character and still stay true to what it is in terms of what it did in Lucifer. And Lucifer was a movie that I believe was very successful because it knew exactly what it was. And we discussed that a little bit in our breakdown with my co-host Doug. We talked a little bit about how this movie was so much fun. Despite the fact that it starts off very heavy, it sort of turns it around and really turns into something that you can really just enjoy. It was a thriller. It was an action movie. It had some cool sequences, had some great performances, but nothing too deep. That's what I really liked about it. That movie, it had the potential to go in a direction where it was going to become something super serious and too deep, but it chose not to. And I appreciated it for that. And I can say the same thing about L2E Empuraan. It was just a fun movie. Like, I really think so. So my expectations were kind of basically trying to model what they were going to do in Lucifer. I had questions regarding how much continuation are we going to have? How much of the Lucifer story did you have to know coming in? Turns out you really had to know nothing. Like, this movie is a standalone movie. I actually appreciate this movie a little bit for that as well. But essentially, yes, my expectations were high, but they were, as long as they sort of stayed true to who they were, I was going to walk away pretty happy, and that's what really happened. So let me get into what I liked about this movie, and that's quite a bit. Now, this movie, just take a step back. We have to remember, this is the Malayalam film industry, and the Malayalam film industry has had a massive year last year. 2024 was such a big year where the industry made so much money, so many successful movies. We had movies like Manju Boys, Brahma Yugam, Adu Jivatam. We had so many movies that made so much money and that were so good in what they did. But this movie feels completely different to all of them. This movie is such a large, high-scale movie that I really don't think I have seen a movie to this level and this scale from the Malayalam film industry, which in itself is a testament to Prithviraj and what he's able to accomplish here. Prithviraj, Mohanlal, the whole crew. It's an ensemble movie. There's a lot of people in this movie, and there's just a great cast of characters, to be honest. Every time they revealed somebody, either old or new, I got a kick out of it. So that was one thing that this movie did well. It balanced the characters from the previous movie with the new characters as well, really well. Like, there's a whole bunch of international characters here. We got the guy from Game of Thrones. If you're a Game of Thrones fan, then you probably might enjoy his performance here. We had some international talent. We had a French actor in this movie. We had English actors. We had a whole bunch of characters from different avenues, and I feel they added to just the international feel of this movie. It is a little bit different because I know Malayalam film industry is very comfortable doing ensemble movies. We have movies like 2018, like Virus, many other movies where they include a lot of, they include a lot of national stars into their movie industries. And we saw a little bit of that with Lucifer when they introduced Vivek Oberoi from the Bollywood industry to come into the movie, and he was just excellent in Lucifer. But we haven't seen this level of like just scale, even in terms of like the locations. We had to sort of move around this movie. I mentioned it a little bit in our trailer reaction that it reminded me a little bit of that Netflix movie with Ryan Gosling where he goes around to all the different countries. A huge big blockbuster movie that one was, and that's what this movie also felt like. You know, going from London to Paris to back to India to parts in, you know, I think it was it Senegal, I think at some point, or the Senegal border, to Iraq. Like there's just so many different places this movie took us, and I quite enjoyed that international exposure as well. I just thought it was fun. It was a fun ride, and again, just watching this on the big screen. Another thing I really liked about this movie was that it's a cinematic movie. Like you should watch this in the cinema. The bigger the screen, the better, I feel. So it didn't come out to IMAX here in Melbourne. It came out to another sort of, I wouldn't call it IMAX, but we have something called a VMAX, which is kind of like a bigger screen. I'm not sure if it's bigger in comparison to other places in the world, but it's a good experience. It's a big screen. It's a nice screen. The sound was good. Watching it in a community group was also fun. A lot of, you know, Mohanlal fans, a lot of Prithviraj fans, cheering whenever sort of there were some of the big action scenes. It was great. So watching this in the cinema, it's worth it. It's a really good time. I enjoyed a lot of the action in this movie too, to be honest. It did have a lot of the character from the first movie, as I said, and the first movie had so many good like sequences and so many memorable events. And I feel like this movie does a pretty good job of that as well. I'd say not as good a job, I would say, to be honest. I think Lucifer, the original movie, did some things better, especially in terms of dialogue. I think it did things a little bit better there. And this is coming from somebody that doesn't understand, you know, the language like that. So I rely on subtitles, but even from the vibe I got from, you know, the translations and things like that, like Lucifer did a bit better job of just landing those sort of, you know, those punchlines, those moments where it was just like, whoa. I remember the scene from Tovino Thomas in his speech and how that was just so cool, even for me watching on TV with the subtitles. So I think this movie didn't land as many like punchlines in the dialogue as well, but the action sequence was great. There are a couple of really good ones. My favorite was probably the ending that I saw there. That was really, really a cool sequence, and I won't say too much more about it because I'll let you guys experience it. I will let you guys experience it. But it was a cool little sequence they have there. Yeah, a lot to like about sort of just, you know, how this movie was put together in terms of like its epicness or, you know, the iconic scenes, if you want to call it. Like it had a lot going on. For a 3-hour movie, again, like Lucifer, I never felt bogged down by the pacing of this movie. Like it felt like it moved at a pretty good pace. It moved at, you know, basically just kept going. There's always something or the other to keep you interested. And that can be a pro and a con. And I'll talk a little bit about that in the con section as well regarding some of the storylines in this movie. But overall, look guys, that's some of the things I liked about this movie. I will touch on a little bit about the characters. As I said, I enjoyed the ensemble performances. A special mention, especially to sort of the big hitters in this movie. Mohanlal, fantastic. I think he just plays his character so well. So, you know, I think it's a little bit less, like, I guess, lifting he has to do in this movie in comparison to Lucifer, where I felt he did a little bit more because he has to establish that character. Now we know him. He's just sort of continuing that same character arc. He was great. Prithviraj was great, but I'll let you guys know, light spoiler, he doesn't really have as much of a role in this movie as I thought he would. The other two standout performances that really stood out for me was Tovino Thomas and Manju Warrier. I think these two were absolutely exceptional. I feel like they both had less of a role in Lucifer. Like while their roles were prominent, in terms of their performances in the first one, they just didn't have that much screen time. Obviously, these two actors can bring it. Like there's no doubt about that. And Manju Warrier especially, I feel like she was fantastic because she, again, plays this character which is so graceful and so confident at the same time. Really a special mention to her. I thought she was fantastic, and she had a pretty cool story arc in this movie as well, which I quite enjoyed. And Tovino Thomas's character was one that I really enjoyed in this. I kind of wish they had sort of pushed the barriers a little bit further with him to really push him somewhere else. But I enjoyed his performance. Some other good performances, Suraj Venjaramodu, kind of a side character in this movie, so maybe we might see more of him in the next one, maybe. But he was also a little fun little not cameo, but I had a small little role which was also enjoyable, and all the international characters too all played their role really well. So guys, as you can tell, I did really enjoy this movie. Like from what I came in expecting expecting to be entertained, it did it for me. Action sequences, good, cinematic sequences, some pretty cool moments. So yeah, I did enjoy it. I will talk about the cons a little bit because I'm going to be honest, there weren't too many for me. Again, telling you my expectation was to be entertained. So if I talk to you guys about Lucifer 1 and Lucifer, if I talk to you guys about the original Lucifer movie, what I walked away after watching that movie, I felt I was very entertained from that movie. Did the storyline shine to me? Not really. The storyline was okay in Lucifer. I think they did some good things, but to me, it was more just being able to create this fun movie. In fact, in our breakdown, in our deep dive I did with Doug, we actually even referred to it and we compared it a little bit with the James Bond franchise and the Fast and Furious franchise. Now, we don't mean to say that in a negative light, because both of those franchises are really, really popular for a reason and they resonate with a lot of people, and that's what Lucifer did as well. So I didn't expect this movie to have a great storyline. In fact, one of my concerns was this is going to get a little bit too convoluted looking at the trailer and what they were doing and incorporating so many different international elements. There's a whole James Bond-esque, literally, he's working with the MI6. So it's very close to James Bond element to this. There's also a very grounded story back home in Kerala with the politics, and that sort of continues on. There's individual stories happening. There's a lot going on in this story. There's Prithviraj's story that's happening in between as well. So there is a lot of, different storylines happening at once, and that is a pro and a con, because you're always entertained about, what part of this movie is this going to relate to and what's it going to come to towards the end. How they're going to tie it all back together somehow. In some ways, you could say that was kind of a negative, and the storyline was a little bit loose in that. You kind of didn't know what was going to happen. You felt a little bit lost. I felt I was a little bit more lost in this movie compared to Lucifer, and that might be because this is the second part as well. We're kind of stuck in between two worlds right now, and the movie does do a good job on the positives. One thing I forgot to mention is setting up something for L3 as well. So I'm not going to talk too much about what they've done for that, but I feel like with the characters they have and the people they have that can be involved with the third chapter of this saga, it could be really good. So that's another positive. But overall, as a slight negative, you could say, if you're somebody that was coming in and expecting an excellent storyline from this, then you might be a little bit disappointed. Look, we reviewed a movie recently from Mohanlal called Chenkol. That is a movie that I expect a very strong storyline, because I had seen Kiridam and I had seen what they had done with that movie, and I expected a very good story out of Chenkol, and I got that. I got themes. I got all that stuff I was expecting out of that. After watching Lucifer, I would not expect that from L2E Empuraan. So slight negative on that, if you want to call it like that. For me, it didn't bother me too much, but hey, let me know in the comments, is that something you agree with, or are you okay with the storyline as it is? Some of the other negatives, I guess these are getting to the point of nitpicky, to be honest. I feel that Prithviraj's character development was a little bit not cohesive enough for me, to my liking. I feel like one of the parts I was excited about for L2E Empuraan was actually seeing Prithviraj and basically what is the story going to tell us with him. They do go into the story, they give us some backstory as well, which was really a little bit darker than I thought it'd go, to be honest. That's one other thing. When I said this movie was mostly in character, the parts that weren't in character was some of the scenes that I saw at the start, which just felt like they were pushing the boundaries a little bit too much for what I like. That could be a personal thing. I didn't really like some of the way that they depicted the villain in this movie either, and that's sort of another negative. But before I go there, I feel like Prithviraj's character, Zaid Masood, has a very deep story, a story that could be its own spin-off movie, really, if they wanted to. But I feel like his character was a little bit negated by giving us really the start of the story and the end of the story, and we get glimpses in between. But I would have liked to see that flesh out more. But I can understand this movie was trying to, put a lot of stuff together, and I don't think we're going to get more of his story now. It seems like it's complete. The arc is complete, but who knows? Let's see what they do. The third negative criticism I have, and this is one that I do feel like I was a little bit let down by. It's really the only one that I would say is a little bit of a striking criticism. The villain, to me, didn't really work. I think they tried really hard to give us a bad villain. Again, if you watch the opening sequence, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about by how they tried to make a really bad villain. How they established Bobby in Lucifer as a villain was so much more effective than what they did here. Despite the fact that this scale was so much larger, the way they created this creepy villain in Bobby with Vivek Oberoi's character, I felt was so much stronger than what they've done here in this movie. It felt overall pretty generic. So that was a little bit of a shame. I feel like nothing to do with the performances. I feel with what they were given, the actors did a good job, but overall, I feel like the villain did not stand out to me. For example, in Lucifer, I will remember Bobby's character just as much as I remember Prithviraj or Mohanlal's character, but in this movie, the villain for me is basically forgettable. There's not much to it, and that just might be my opinion. Again, guys, let me know in the comments section. I could just be completely wrong and off base, but hey, that's what you guys are here to tell me. That was basically it, guys. That's my review for the movie. As I said, I thoroughly enjoyed it. I think it's a good watch. I think you should go out and watch it. I feel like if you go in with maybe muted expectations, I'm not saying that. I say if you go in with the same expectations that I had, then you're someone that is probably going to enjoy this movie. If you are somebody that's expecting something different, a different kind of flavor of Lucifer than what we saw before, then you might be a bit disappointed. If you're thinking that the storyline is going to be a little bit better, then yeah, you might be a little bit disappointed. But for me personally, again, as I said, I loved it. I would love to know what you guys think about this movie, and I'd love to know what you guys think. Are you excited for L3? Because that's the other thing that I'm really excited for. I actually can't wait for Lucifer 3 to come out when it does now. I hope it doesn't take as long, because just the way they ended this without revealing too much and how they end it, but there is potential for some real epicness in L3. Like, if they go to where I'm thinking they're going, which, I mean, they are definitely going there, but yeah, it can be pretty spectacular, I think, in L3. So I'm even more excited for L3, and I feel like L3 could even surpass L2 in terms of just being, a cinematic experience. So yeah, that's really it for me, guys. Let me know in the comment section, and thanks again for checking out the video. If you've listened this far, then you might as well subscribe. I cover Malayalam content. I have my friends that come along when we cover Malayalam content. Love this industry and love to see where they're going with this industry now, even more so after Lucifer 2. Thanks for listening again, and I'll see you guys on the next one.